A rabbit stands up on its hind legs and decapitates a man, a knight is defeated by a gigantic snail, a nun plucks penises from a tree. These are just some of these strange images, along with various other messages that were left in the margins of many illustrated manuscripts produced during the Middle Ages. Referred to as the marginalia, many of the written doodles are funny and give us glimpses into the lives of the medieval people who were carrying out what was probably a very tedious job. Let's face it, people wouldn't be human if they couldn't find humour in their lives. The noise of a fart is just as funny now as it was in the 12th century. So every now and again the cheeky medieval scribe might add a little comment in the border such as, "Ow, my hand," "New parchment, bad ink, I say nothing more," "Thank God it will soon be dark," and "Now I've written the whole thing, for Christ's sake give me a drink," which sort of takes the shine off the holiness of the words they are supposed to be writing. Painted onto vellum or parchment with squirrel head brushes by monks, nuns and urban artists, they also added images to fill the margins of some of the most treasured books of the Middle Ages. With toilet humour, mythical animals and medieval porn, you could be forgiven for forgetting that some of these handmade books were supposed to be devotional. Here are some of those bizarre and sometimes risque images.
But before we jump into the video, we'd like to take a moment to thank today's sponsor. Can you imagine Vikings in a tank? How about Celts, Anglo-Saxons, monks, or perhaps even Eleanor of Aquitaine? Tanks really would have been a real game changer in the medieval period. So maybe it's not exactly historically accurate to be imagining the venerable Bede rolling up to fight the infidels in a tank, but at least with today's sponsor you can be guaranteed that the tanks will be historically accurate. Thanks to World of Tanks for sponsoring today's video. We're really excited to be working with them, so make sure you register using our link to join in the fun. It's free to play, and by using our code TANKMANIA, you'll get a whole host of exciting bonuses. By registering at our link and using TANKMANIA, you'll get a Tier 5 Excelsior tank, 250k credits, and 7 days premium access. And for added heretic crushing delight, you'll also get access to 3 Tier 6 rental tanks for 10 battles each. These are the Tiger 131, Cromwell B, and the T3485M. This code is only for new players registering for the first time on the Wargaming portal, so make sure you don't miss out on this amazing offer. This is also the perfect time to register, as World of Tanks is hosting its biggest event of the year, Holiday Ops. Arnold Schwarzenegger returns to World of Tanks alongside Mila Jovovich from Resident Evil, ready to kick butt and take no prisoners. There are loads of rewards like premium tanks, crews, customizations, and special missions. You can even get Arnold and Mila as commanders if you complete their character quests. And as one final added bonus, World of Tanks is available on your PC, console, or mobile. And did we mention it's free to play? Register using our link in the description and the code TANKMANIA to jump in and get those tanks rolling out. Welcome to Medieval Madness.
Homicidal rabbits. Today, most people associate rabbits with cuteness and fluff, but in imagery which was seen across many areas of Europe, those fluffy bunnies are portrayed by scribes as violent beasts who subject humans to all manner of torments. The Smithfield Decretals is a huge volume of church laws made by Pope Gregory IX. It contained various Bible stories, the biographies of saints and fables, as well as scenes from everyday life, and many copies of the manuscript still survive. The copy that ended up in London was illuminated by local artists who added images and motifs in and around the text. It is well known for its astonishing series of marginalia. In fact, every single one of its 626 pages is illustrated with imagery. In the first image, one rabbit is holding a kneeling man in a headlock, whilst the other menacingly waves a mace at his head. Another depicts a similar bunny beheading a kneeling man with a huge sword. Another example of the psychopathic rabbit can be found in the Gorleston Psalter, which is also well known for its funny marginalia. Written in Norfolk, England during the early 14th century, it contains mostly psalms and is thought to be written by at least 3 different scribes. This rabbit appears to be much smaller and is in a seated position, swinging a large axe at the head of what looks to be a churchman, possibly a bishop. What is most unnerving is the fact that the rabbits do appear to be enjoying themselves. Murderous bunnies are found in many writings across Europe during the Middle Ages and can be seen beheading, lancing and firing arrows into humans. In the Breviary of Renaud and Margaret, a French manuscript which was written around 1303, we see animals at war. A clearly distressed rabbit has a dog on its shoulders which is carrying a shield. Another bunny appears to be riding on a snail, which bizarrely has a human head. This type of role reversal of animals was typical of medieval humour. There are many other anthropomorphic examples in marginal art, such as this rabbit playing the organ with a dog. Or this rabbit playing the trumpet in Petrus Comestor's great study of the Bible. Turning the world on its head was also used during the medieval Christmas, when a choir boy would be chosen to take the place of a bishop and assume his duties during the Feast of the Innocents. Perhaps this rabbit who is getting his revenge on a hunting dog is just a continuation of this theme. Or maybe it's about stupidity. After all, this man would have to be pretty stupid to be caught by a rabbit. Snails behaving badly. Snails were a popular motif in medieval manuscripts and often depicted fighting with knights. It's unclear why this particular image appears again and again, or why snails were so hated. Some historians have suggested that it could be a symbol of man's struggle with the temptation of the female, the latter being represented by the snail. Other theories include the resurrection and the slowness of time. This one is from Brunetto Latini's Book of Treasures. Latini was a 13th century poet, politician and philosopher. Although he was Italian and originally from Florence, he wrote the Compendium of Knowledge in French because he believed it was the most enjoyable and most common spoken language at that time. Or that it is a possible depiction of the struggles endured by the poor and their oppression by the aristocracy. After all, these manuscripts were made and copied by tradespeople who were employed by the rich, and from much of the marginalia we can see the artists are making fun of their masters. In this one from Queen Mary Salter there are two snails attacking. And in this one by Galveston Salter the knight appears to have surrendered. Perhaps it could even be as straightforward as the snail being a pest of the vegetable garden that needs to be dealt with. Or that the snail represents the inevitability of death which defeats everyone in the end, even the toughest and bravest of knights. The image appears so much that its meaning was probably obvious to the medieval reader, although we may never know what it signified. Get behind me. Bottom humour played a huge role in marginal art from the Middle Ages. In these two hunting scenes from a text kept at Yale University, we can see two men being shot in the bum. The first man seems to be quite defiant as he offers up his butt for the crossbow bolt. The second, from the Pontifical of Guillaume Durand, has already received an arrow to the bottom. An image from Rutland Salter, which was made in London around 1260, portrays an ogre shooting an arrow into the rear of a strange monster, which seems to resemble some sort of merman. Even the king himself gets in on the bottom trend when he is shown defecating on the heads of two strange-looking creatures. The text of the epic poem The Vows of the Peacock portrays a naked man sticking his finger up his backside and mooning whilst some noble men and women play chess nearby. Whereas in the Alexander Romance, a nun is appalled and throws her hands up to shield her view of a monk who is bleeding profusely from his rear end. The Alexander Romance was extremely popular in England. It retells the life and adventures of Alexander the Great. Originally written before 338 CE, the text was widely translated and copied in the Middle Ages. Bum notes. Backsides are also popular when it comes to the playing of musical instruments. On the pages of the Maastricht Book of Hours, which was made in Belgium, we see a monkey-like animal who sticks some sort of pipe up the rear end of another, who is playing a trumpet. In the late 13th century manuscript, The Mirror of History, part of a huge encyclopedia called The Great Mirror, and written by the French Dominican friar Vincent de Beauvais, there is a depiction of a very talented man who plays music from both ends of his body. The Bonnacon. Once again, the butt comes into play when we meet the mythical Bonnacon beast. The medievals believed that this animal resembled a bull, but had a horse's mane and spiral-shaped horns. But what made the Bonnacon stand out among other animals was its amazing defense mechanism when in danger. The Aberdeen Bestiary, which was probably made in Canterbury, England in the 12th century, refers to the Bonnacon's superpower by stating, quote, "But the protection which its forehead denies this monster is furnished by its bowels. For when it turns to flee, it discharges fumes from the excrement of its belly over a distance of 3 acres. the heat of which sets fire to anything it touches. In this way, it drives off its pursuers with its harmful excrement. We can see how truly embarrassed the animal is that it has created such a stink in this image. It's very unlikely that the foul-smelling beast ever really existed, but it is possible that the medievals had mistaken the Bonnacon for the European bison, which was eventually hunted to extinction in 1919. Sex sells. Another popular text was the Roman de la Rose, or the Romance of the Rose, which is a French poem that had been described as an allegorical dream vision. A love story where the name Rose applies not only to the titular character, but also becomes a symbol of female sexuality. It was written by two different authors 45 years apart, starting in 1230 and being finished in 1275. By concentrating on sensual language, intrigue and infidelity, it became quite the 50 Shades of Grey of the 14th and 15th centuries, and was as important as the Canterbury Tales in its time. It was probably the most read book in Europe. In this racy image, which has become known as the Wife's Trust, we find two women getting it on, whilst the husband to one of them sleeps in the bed nearby, oblivious to his wife's unfaithfulness. If he had woken up, he probably wouldn't have been as startled as King Philip of Macedonia was in the Alexander romance when he caught his wife in bed with a dragon. Back with the Romance of the Rose, we find a nun harvesting penises from a tree and filling up her basket with them. What she is going to do with the phalluses afterwards, we can only speculate. But the job must have become too much for her at some point, because we can see from this illustration that she has asked another nun to come and give her a hand. In this image, a man is handing one over to a woman, but from the look on his face we can't really tell whether it's his or someone else's. Speaking of penises, we can find a rather large one in Decretum Gratiani. This book was written by the Italian lawyer in the 12th century and contains a collection of canon laws. Rather than hanging limply from a tree, this one seems to be in the form of some sort of monster and is quite happily being ridden by a naked woman. And just plain weird. Back in the breviary of Renaud de Bar, we find two men who are about to take part in a pointless sword fight. Pointless because they are both already headless. Perhaps it's an allegory about the futility of war. Totally unrelated, but it also has a lion playing a fiddle. In the Book of Hours, which was commissioned by Duke Jean de Berry in 1407, we find this disturbing creature who appears to be eating a donut. And in another Book of Hours, this time made around 1240 by William de Brailles, we see a spirited nun giving a not too happy demon a black eye. On a page from the Earl of Macclesfield's Psalter, which was probably produced between 1320 and 30 and has remarkably lavish designs, there are many fantastic images, such as a monkey doctor giving some sort of treatment to a poorly bear, a bishop with some sort of animal's back legs and face for a bottom, a man being attacked by a giant skate, and a strange grotesque figure who is holding out a bowl whilst the naked man appears to be urinating in it. From musical rabbits to naked bishops, butt trumpets to phallic trees, each weird and wonderful illustration gives us an insight into the lives and minds of the medievals. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed a deep dive into some of this medieval art, and please comment below if you'd like us to do more videos like this, or generally what else you want us to look into. Hope everyone has a great week. Cheers!